Hey, how are you? My name is Abdul Hadi Salom, and this is a video about my e-bike kit that I got it from e-bikeling.com. I'm from Chicago, so e-bikeling is from Chicago. It's right here, the motor, and this is the bike actually. 1 minute. As you see, this is the bike. This one is the 1,200 watt e-bike. And it peaks out. It's a 1,200 watt e-bike kit, and it's with the controller that's inside the basket right here. Controller is hitting actually. Hit it. Gotta put the light on. There we go. These are the wires. The controllers inside there. Can't see actually good with this all this drags around it. Controller's right there somewhere hitting. I wrapped it. It's a 48 volt and 30 amp. So 30 amp or 48 times 30 is gonna get me 1,440 watt. This motor is rated for, it's a 1,200 watt motor. It's rated for 1,000 and it's rated for 1,450 watts. So 1,450 watts. So like I have a 20 amp battery. It gets me like I'm using like a 20.8 amp battery in my house, and it gets me around like 30 miles, 31, sometimes 31 if it's not windy. If it's not windy and how much I'm carrying on this bike, it gets me around 30, 31, between that range, 30, 31. If it's if the bike I got a lot of stuff on it, but I mean, if it's, I don't have all the stuff on my bike, I mean, I even carry more stuff actually. But I mean, maybe if you put on a lighter bike, it probably could get even 32 miles per hour. But if you get a 30 amp battery for this, which is the most you can go 30, you could probably hit 40 miles on this conversion kit. And it comes with the throttle. I choose the e-bike throttle, as you see right here. Put a mirror right here, and I choose the LED display instead of the LCD. I'll tell you later about that later. And as you see here, I came with the pedal assist sensor. As I use it because I've been doing research about the e-bike conversions kit with the pedal assist sensor. If you use the pedal assist sensor, it's better than the throttle, because the throttle, when you're going like a lot of speed and like a lot of miles, like 30, 40 miles, you can put pressure on the motor, like like when you're putting you can put like pressure on the motor. But with the pedal assist sensor, you don't put no pressure at all. So the pedal assist sensor, it works like a throttle. Once you pedal, you start going like 30 miles per hour. So I heard I've been doing like a lot of research on the throttle versus the pedal assist sensor. I got it from a lot of e-bike shops. They said pedal assist sensor, it's it's more better because once you pedal, the motor engages. And they said, so far I heard from a lot of electric bike companies, they said the pedal assist sensor is better than the throttle. Throttle, you can use it for emergency. You get throttle, pedal assist sensor, motor. The motor brake inhibitors, I don't use it. I don't really use it at all because, you know, technically I don't need those. You could just use regular brakes. I mean, we're not going like 80 miles per hour or 100 miles per hour, but this is it. And another reason is I choose the LED display. Now I know the LED. I mean, the LCD is a computer because there's like a lot of stuff you have to go in the system, in programs it. And if you sometimes if you program it like in a different voltage on the LCD, yeah, you could. I mean, you can probably it could do some multi functions, and you know, with some errors and stuff like that. But with the LCD, with the LED, you don't have to worry about this crazy settings. You don't have to go through the parameter settings and all this crazy stuff. You just turn it off. It's already programmed through the controller. It's programmed through the LED, and this is modes: slow, medium, and high. Slow will take you around 10 miles per hour. Medium will take you around 20, 21, you know, and the high will take you it depends how windy it is. It'll take you around 29 to 31. And how much? With my bike, I go actually on it maybe like 30, 31. I did a test range on it, 30, 31 somewhere. You know, with the battery that I have, it's 998 watts, 20.8 amps, 48 volts. Now, a lot of people, as you see, there is a way you could hit topper speed, but it's gonna lower your range. I heard seen that people like you could swap out a 48 volt controller and remove the, and you know, this is 1,400. Just remember, this motor is 1,450 watts. It peaks out. You cannot go more than 1,450 watts. If you put a battery that has like more wattage on it, you could destroy this motor. You would if you want something like more like real high power or like high speed and high range, you would have to get a stronger motor like those 3,000 watt rear wheel that I seen in E-bikeling, or like the 1,000 watt that peaks around 1,850, or the 3,000 watt, as I was mentioning, that peaks around 4,000 watts. Those you could do more high speed and more. You could do more high speed and more watt. And more range. The point is that the battery. So let's say if you want to know how many watts the battery is, you have to put how much the battery. You get like a 48 volt times 20 amps. So all you got to do is multiply 48 volt times 20 is going to take you to around between 900 and between like 998 watts, right? So that 998 watts you have in the battery. So you have 998 watts. So it's 20 times 48 volts, right? So you have around 960 actually. Yeah, it's 960 watts. So my motor is 1,450 watts. So it's 1.45 kilowatts, right? It's 1.45 kilowatts. So I should be good. So I don't have no problem. So the motor I could use has like 1,450 watts I could use up to it. If I bring a battery and it's 960 watts, which is 48 times 20, that's 960 watts. So I shouldn't have a problem with using a 48 volt 20 amp battery. But if I get like my controller is only rated up to 30 amps, which means I could use like 48 times 20. 48 times 30 is going to be 1,440 watts. So if I let's say I buy a battery, a new battery, and it's 30 amps, 48 volts. But you have to make sure that battery cannot go more than 30 amps, because 30 amps. Because the controller goes up to 30 amps, it cannot go no more than 30 amps. Just put that in mind. If you have this kit and you want to buy, upgrade it to a higher battery, stronger battery, So I buy a 48 volt times 30. So I'm going to multiply 48 volt times 30 amps on the battery. That's going to give me around 1,440 watts. Now I have a battery that's 1,440 watts that's going into a motor that's 1,450 watts can handle. Now that'll be okay, but that's you cannot go more than that, because the control is rated at 30 amps, which is 1,440 watts, and the motor, just to be in the safe watt, it's 1,440 watts, and the motor could take only 1,450 watts. So you got that's 10 watts lesser than so that's good. You cannot go more than that. If you want something stronger, you would have to like say if you want like a battery like a 48 volt maybe like 40 amps, which is more watts, you would have to get a stronger motor, because there's only this motor only peaks out to 1,450 watts. Now the other way, there are people that you see on the on YouTube that they buy kits like these, and they you see them, they say, oh, they go 40 miles per hour, 37 miles per hour. What they do is actually they use the same kit as this. It's 1,400. What is this? 1,450 watts. Yeah, or they use a 1,500 watt kit. But what they do is they take the controller. They get what's called a different display, which is the LCD. That takes, let's say I buy a 72 volt battery, right? And I put the 72 to battery, and I have to buy a 72 volt controller. I gotta change the controller, and I gotta change the LED into a LED that'll take us. You go on the setting, put 72 volt, and you get a 72 volt controller. And then you buy the 72 volt battery. But there's one thing, that if you're using that 72 volt battery on this motor, just make sure you cannot get like a strong. So let's say if so you're gonna have to multiply 72 maybe times, like it's gonna be like between 72 times 10 amps battery, or like 72 like 15. So if I buy a 72 volt battery and I put it, you are going to go faster. Maybe you can get 40 miles per hour, but it's going to give you less range. You're going to get like around on a full charge battery, and if you're going 40 miles per hour, you're only going to get like 10 miles out of this out of this kit. So let's say if I put a 1,500 watt motor on this, and I buy a 72 volt battery. Yeah, a 72 volt battery. I'm gonna have to make sure that battery doesn't, the amps. As you see, you multiply the amps times the voltage, which is gonna lead to the watts. So the 1,500 watt is peak power is gonna be 1,850 watt. So I'm gonna make sure I cannot, go more than 1,850 watt if I'm using a 1,500 watt motor. So yeah, you can go faster, but you gotta make sure you don't have too much amps on that battery, because it will destroy the motor. It will heat up the motor. Yeah, because you would have to buy a battery that's that could go. But the point is, if you're using like a 72 volt, you could go from low to high. But if you go like really fast, it's just gonna you're not gonna get a lot of range out of it. That's why I recommend for myself, I'm sticking with the 48 volt controller. Because I see these days the 48 controller are more popular. You can get them waterproof connectors, and you can get LED on 48 volt or LCD. Plus, if I use if I'm using a 48 volt, you can use it on a 1,200 watt motor or a 1,500 watt motor. But you can even go actually like but you got to make sure you don't put a lot of amps on that. You got to make sure when you buy a battery, you got to see how many amps it has, because if you're going to multiply the amps times the voltage. If you're using a 48 volt on these kits, like the 1,200 watt kit or the 1,500 watt kit, you would actually it's not going to give you maybe it will give you like high speed on the amps. It depends on how many watts it puts in, but it will give you better longer range. Like for me, I got the 48 volt times 20 amp battery, which is 960 amps, or it's actually a 20.8 amp battery, so it'll be like 998. I do a top speed on this, it's 30 miles per hour. I get range out of it 41 miles. So 41 miles on a on a 30 miles ride, that's pretty decent. I mean, for a 48 volt and a 20 amp, that's pretty decent. Plus you got to remember that it's only a 20 amp. But if I buy a 30 amp, so it'll give you more range. And if you're going like less speed, if you're going maybe like 25, 25 miles. Or if you go 20 miles, you get maybe like 50, 60 miles. If you're going like less 20 miles, or if you put on eco mode, you get even longer maybe. I don't know how much, but I usually go on high speed on this motor, So I always put like 30 miles, you know, because I'm 43 years old, you know, I got a driver's license. I don't have to worry about me, you know, about the speed, because, you know, I know how to drive this stuff. So that's it, you know, just make sure you gotta, when you buy a battery, you gotta multiply voltage times the amps. It's gonna give you the watts. Now, when you buy a battery for a motor, you gotta make sure it's, you know, it's compatible with the controller and the display. Because if you're going for a 72 volt, you gotta get a 72 volt controller and a 72 volt this LCD display or whatever, the display. But you got to make sure these high voltages like 60 volt or 52 volt or 72 volt, they could only be used on motors like 1200, 1500 watt, the 3000 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 watt motor, which is peak out 4000 from E-bikeling. And you know, this is a pretty good kit, as you see. E-bikeling, right here. The sign, E-bikeling right here, got it. Yep, got it right here. And I also put a suspension fork. You know, a lot of people told me, you know, yeah, there's another thing about this. These motors are really good. E-bikelings motors are really good, especially the 1200 watt, the front, and the rear one, the 1005 watt. Because when I was going on his website, I was checking it out. They don't have really a lot of torque, you know. I mean, I'm using a suspension fork. It's made of magnesium, and these are not like, you know, these are like the magnesium suspension fork. I heard a lot of people that, you know, when you're using, you know, when you're putting like heavy motors like these, they could, you know, break the fork. So you gotta, you know, put these torque arms. I put one in the front and the back, and I never seen the torque arm a little loose. I checked my fork, and the fork is 100% good. Because when I found out how much torque, I mean, this has a lot of watts. It'll take you like high speed and a lot of, you know, good range. The torque, it doesn't have a lot, you know, high torque. So that's good. That's another good thing about these motors, that they don't have a high torque. So all you gotta do is just put these torque arms, connect them, make sure that you connect them the properly right way, and you can move good, you know. So you don't have, so I can put it on front or, you know, or back, you know. I just put a torque arm and that's it. And this is even made out of, you know, magnesium, the suspension fork. It's not made of, but the frame of this bike is made of aluminum or steel and heavy duty. This bike, I had it for like 11 years, you know. I got even a mirror here, full mount, double handlebar. And, you know, a lot of people, when they buy a bike, like these kind of bikes, you know, they say, like, where are you going to mount the battery? Like, where are you going to mount the batteries? You know, if you put, like, these, I recommend, you know, when you buy a battery, you know, buy a basket, buddy. Go to a bike shop, buy a basket like these or a back basket, and put it, you know, the basket in the end or in the front. And I recommend another thing, guys, that when you buy it, like, if you buy the rear wheel, put the battery in the front. Don't put the battery in the back, because your body is going to be in the back, and the motor is going to be in the back, and the motor is going to be in the back, and the battery is going to be in the back, and your body is going to be. That's too much weight, and you know, I wouldn't recommend if you're using a 700C wheel. I recommend, because you're going to go on bumps and terrains. You might start, you know, the rim might wear off later. Like in 2 years, the rim is going to be no good. So that happened to me before. So I recommend, if you're going with the rear, put the battery in the front. Don't put the battery in the back, because it's going to put a lot of weight. Depends how heavy the battery is, you know. And this is like the e-bikeling is pretty good, you know. I like the motors. They're very good, reliable, good service, and they're in Chicago too. And you know, these are motors I like. I mean, they're not like high motorcycle motors, but you know, they're like mopeds motors, and they're like really, you know, they're like mopeds motors, as you see. 1,200 watt. This is a 1,200 watt kit. It peaks out around 1,450 watt. You know, it's not like 1,500, which is peak out 1,850, or the 3,000 watt. But it's I wanted the front. I didn't want it to go with the rear, because I don't like putting the weight in the back. You know, because I have a 700C wheel. 700C wheel could like 3 years or 4 years, you might have to like they might like be the rim. You might have to like chew it because this is a bicycle wheel you're using. You're not using like those mopeds wheel. So just put that in mind. You know, if you're thinking about getting a rear wheel hub motor like those 1200 or 1500, put the battery in the front because too much weight it might affect on the rim. You know, yeah. Put the battery in the front, or if you could customize a basket in the middle over here. You know, like a frame basket, like a motorcycle. You know, yeah. It would put like a like a box over here maybe, and put a battery in the controller in the middle. That'll be fine. But do not, yes. But if you're putting the motor in the front, you can put the battery in the back. It does not affect. But you know. That's my opinions, you know, because I've been e-biking for like 5-6 years, you know. So yeah, but this is really good. The front wheel you won't have to worry about because there's no weight in the front one, in the front motor. Like if you put, I took the front because I want the front because I don't have to worry about chewing it or like the rims are chew. I mean, I have rims, e-bike motors. I had them like for 5-10 years. I never chewed the front at all. The front, there's no weight in the front because like for the back, you might have like 2 or 3 years. The rim might have to, you might have to chew it, or maybe just the rim. The motor, will last forever. You know, the motor could last forever, but the rim, because you're forgetting if you're using a 700C wheel, you might like a 700C wheel. You know, yeah, a 700C rim. You know, it might like. Later on in the future, the back, it might take stress a little bit, but the front, you got front suspension. I added front suspension on this. You shouldn't have no problem with it. Yeah, and that's why. But if you go with the 26-inch rim, those I think will be good. That's why I've seen a lot of people, when they buy like electric motor conversion kit, they usually buy them on 26-inch. Which is a good idea. I think the 26-inch, a fat rim. That will save you, I mean, they could last more and more long, the rims. And thank you, that's my e-bike kit, and I like it. Have a nice day. Oh, another thing is I cannot do a test ride because it's raining outside.